Hello, welcome to Commissioner's Corner. I'm Commissioner Charlotte Garrido, and we're here at Coulter Creek Heritage Park today. This is a wonderful park in South Kitsap that was purchased between about the years 2000 and 2003 or 4. It's not as well used as it could be, and we're here today to introduce you to aspects of it. It's got some wonderful wetlands and water bodies and watersheds, lots of native life, and we're going to take a look at some of that today. But in the end, I wanted to introduce you to the forest stewardship plan that we have for this park, which was completed in November of 2017. It lays out some interesting information about the natural resource guidelines for Coulter Creek Heritage Park, which are really to make sure that we're balancing the natural resources with the public recreational uses of this park. We haven't quite planned all those out yet, but let's take a look at what some of them are today. I've got Arno Bergstrom here today, who is Kitsap County's forester, and he has done the work on helping put together this resource plan. And he's going to take us for a little bit of walk and show us some things here in the park. Arno Bergstrom?
Thank you, Commissioner Garrido. Well, Coulter Creek is really a large park, one of the largest parks in Kitsap County. It's 1,200 acres, and it adjoins the Calvinwood Camp Calvinwood, which is also county owned. So if you throw that in there, it's over 1,300 acres of property that's county owned. And really, historically speaking, was really owned by all this land in this area was owned by the same family, the McCormick family. And like Commissioner Garrido said, it was acquired in the early 2000s, and it's largely gone undiscovered. A lot of the county has been busy with other acquisitions, and other parks have had really good success in attracting stewardship groups that are very passionate, and they charge in and they get things done. And as Commissioner Garrido alluded to, we need a stewardship plan or group for this park. It would help get it going like all the rest of them in the county. A little bit about this park: there's a lot of water, whether it's wetlands, a lake, and plenty of fish-bearing streams, and of course some non-fish-bearing streams as well. It's a very complicated or complex hydrologic landscape here, and of course the overlay is a forest and everything that comes with the forest. The forest is more than just trees; it's all the plant communities and all the wildlife that lives here. And as a forester, though, my focus is on the largest plants, and those are the trees. And we have the usual assortment of trees: the Douglas fir, the hemlock, the cedar, the red alder, and a variety of other trees, white pine and shore pine, and some minor hardwood species as well.
So, Arno, could we take a look at some of those just so we know what you're talking about?
Oh, what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, right behind me actually is a really nice maturing western hemlock. That's our state tree. And what's interesting about all of these trees I've mentioned, they all have different characteristics in terms of how they grow and develop, how long they live, what conditions they need. Hemlock, for example, is a tree that is tolerant of some shade, so it can grow and kind of languish in the understory of a forest, and then when something happens and gives it more light, then it can take off and become a tree like this one is.
But we're seeing a pretty nice cross-section of trees right in here.
Yeah, got a white pine over there, a little sapling under a hemlock. There's a bigger one right there. It's one of my favorite trees. And there's a unique tree. It's behind the sign there. That's a madrone or madrona, depending on how you choose to pronounce it.
Yeah. Well, why don't we go look at some of the wonderful water bodies that are here?
Okay, perfect. Yeah, this is a beautiful spot.
Wow, sure is.
Yep.
This looks very calm today, doesn't it?
It does. It's really, really beautiful. This is a kind of a side edge or an area looping around an island on Nels Johnson Lake. And one of the things you can notice out in that direction, you can see the stumps of trees, and that clearly indicates that the level of the lake was lower historically in the past. How long ago is really not easy necessarily to figure out. It could be figured out, but and the water level is at least a foot, if not 2 feet lower than it is during the peak rains in the winter.
2 feet, that's quite a lot.
Yeah, I would say. It's been up, yeah, easily.
And you've got some lovely lily pads decorating the lake.
Yeah. And this is a lake that supplies water to a fish-bearing stream, so it's considered fish-bearing also. Probably at least trout.
I think I just heard one.
Heard something jump there.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
Another one.
Yep, definitely. Where's the rod and reel?
So Arno, part of your job is ecological forestry, and this grove seems like a really good example. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. This is a hemlock stand, western hemlock. I talked about it earlier. It's it's an uneven age tree, so these trees could vary in age greatly. I would say a bigger tree could very likely be an older tree. They're very, very spectacular. And they're kind of a lot of people associate it with in terms of stages of a forest, a forest that's maturing or is older. And even though this particular species doesn't live really, really long, only 200 to 300 years, it's kind of its life expectancy. But this area where these trees are is really interesting because you have a lot of hemlock coming up, young seedlings and saplings, and other species. There's red alder in here. Wherever there is a tree that's fallen, and it could be one of these hemlock, you end up with a hole in the forest canopy and lets in light, and then the alder comes in. Sometimes big leaf maple comes in. I wish we had a lot more of it here at Coulter. And then you end up with a really complex forest. And that's really what we're striving to do. We don't really manage the hemlock. What we do is protect them, preserve them, reserve them when we're selecting trees, when we're doing some of the thinning that I do. We'll talk about
how
that.
do you protect them from the woodpeckers?
Oh, we're giving the woodpeckers some habitat. That's how we look at it.
A couple of big trees, it looks like.
Yeah. Well, these hemlock are competing with each other. You know, they're all of them want all the light and all the goodies, and a tree that's more stressed usually is much more attractive to bugs and birds, ones that go after the things that happen to a tree that's stressed out. So. This is really headwaters. This is really classic kind of headwater condition, and big, nice trees around the shoreline, and it's producing a lot of snags, a lot of trees that eventually do die and fall in the water, and that's just making the habitat all that more complex.
Well, it's actually spectacularly beautiful,
Right.
And I imagine that it is a complex habitat just by the different living.
This is what
places.
the wildlife folk and the tribes want. That's what they want, and what we all should.
Well, Arno, here we are at the rippling stream, and it's summertime, and it's been a very dry summer, and we don't seem to see any water at all. What's going on here?
Well, the rains will come back in what could be September, October, and the trees will absorb as much of it as they can in the uplands, and then it will seep down and it'll fill the lake, and the stream will start flowing, and even along the stream shore, it'll in the riparian area along the stream, water will just find its way to the flow and start flowing south all the way down to, in this case, Rocky Creek.
It's a spawning habitat, isn't it?
Yes, it's considered fish-bearing stream, trout at the very least, and possibly coho.
So coho go quite a ways upstream to be spawning.
They can. Like in some of our other parks, they're up in areas just like that. This is really prime habitat if they can, if there's no blockages. If they can make it all the way up here, this would be ideal habitat. And again, that's not my area of expertise, but I've kind of rubbed up against it enough to know a little bit about it. One thing I want to say is that when it comes to the streams and the wetlands, we do buffering. All of it's required by state law under the forest practices rules, but we also, as a county, we adopted some additional measures to protect all wetlands, all types of wetlands, and expanded. Commissioner, you might remember that. We had a resolution, and so we went a little bit further, especially for our parks. It was specifically focused on our parks, because some of the forest practices rules don't necessarily provide that kind of coverage yet, although I'm anticipating more of them will.
And yet it is a network.
Yeah, everything. It's all interconnected, and it's working. Plus, when we're thinning, the rules are really designed for the worst. I guess I'll use the word worst thing that would happen, and that's clear cutting. And so we're thinning down not to the stream, but we're using the buffers, but we're still thinning, and we're not clear cutting. So there's, I think it's built into our system that we provide more protection to the streams, and also can contribute more large woody debris to the stream.
Well, not only to the stream, but standing here, I do miss having the stream going under the bridge because it's really beautiful. But we're seeing very different vegetation here. We can still see clear over to where we were earlier, where there's the old growth tree that looks like it's finally died. But you had pointed out the interesting pattern that the limbs made with the old growth trees, and it's kind of nice to see from a distance as well as up close.
Yeah. Any of these trees can develop those characteristics if they live long enough, and that's what we're hoping. These are young trees. These trees, you got to think in terms of 300 years, 400 years. You're talking 7 to 10 generations from now. Some of these trees will be here, and they'll be magnificent, and they'll have those characteristics.
Well, that far is kind of difficult for me to think about.
I think it is too, but I like the idea of it.
But knowing many of these trees have been here for that many generations,
almost 80 years.
Well.
And some longer, hundreds and hundreds of years.
It helps you see, backward and forward, and the need for additional planning. So thank you so much for guiding us through some of the things that we're seeing out here at Coulter Creek Heritage Park. I sure appreciate your talents and your wisdom, and I'm sure that our viewers will too. But I wanted to talk directly to you who are watching. We do need to plan more for this Heritage Park. There are so many wonderful resources here that we do need to plan into the future for. And if you would like to volunteer to be on a stewardship group, we would definitely love to have you. We are looking for people who would like to walk the park, take notes, begin to work with others about what the future of the Coulter Creek Heritage Park would look like. And we know that we want to include some of the qualities of this park, the water bodies, the watersheds, the habitat, the trees. But we also want to consider very practical things about the recreational opportunities for citizens of Kitsap County, appropriate recreational activities in this park, as well as just simple things like access to the park. Where do we park? How do we enter the park? And so that more people can enjoy it. And just plain look at some of the recreational activities that are congruent with the natural resources in Coulter Creek Heritage Park. I'd love to hear from you and look forward to working with you on the future plan for this park. Thanks again, Arno.
You're welcome.